Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Now, several metros and municipal councils around the country have been besieged by power struggles. There seems to be no end in leadership changes at various councils, with parties bringing several motions of no confidence against each other. In Joburg, for instance, Mayor Mpopalata was ousted yesterday, while the so-called Super 7, consisting of smaller parties in Ekurhuleni, say they're not yet done with the Democratic Alliance. In KZN, Mayor Kaunda is also not sitting pretty. What do we make of these ructions? Let's find out from local governance expert Dr. Harlan Cloete. Dr. Cloete, thank you very much for your time here on eNCA. Of course, this definitely will mean that services that are supposed to be rendered to those living in these particular metros will not necessarily go as well as we deserve.
Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to all the viewers as well. Yes, it doesn't bode well. Ours is a very contested democracy. It's robust, it's vibrant, and what we've seen, it's the first time in terms of this coalition governance, and they have been unstable. From 1 November last year to where we are now, it has not been a pretty sight in terms of coalitions, especially within the bigger metros.
Now, Doc, for me also what it says, particularly in a city like the city of Johannesburg, where you're finding one of the mayoral candidates at the moment being Tapelo Ahmed from Al Jamar. Al Jamar only has one seat in the Joburg Council, which means it was not many, Joburg residents who voted for this particular party to be in council. Yes, there's a few and they deserve to be represented, but they already are. Is it not unfair to the residents of Johannesburg to find themselves with a mayor that they didn't necessarily vote for?
You see, I've said from the beginning, after 1 November, when we had these coalitions, the best form of coalition is for the ANC, the two biggest losers. If the electorate do not give you a majority, then I think it would be best for the two biggest losers, in this case, the DA and the ANC, to put their perceived ideological differences aside and to work and to govern in the best interest of the citizens in that particular area. And so that is one way of looking at it. The second one is the system of governance that we have. The municipal system of governance allows for a collective executive system or a mayoral committee system. And so in the Eastern Cape, for example, it was just promulgated that towards the end of last year that they're changing that system to a collective executive system. So in the collective executive system, the mayor is not all that powerful, and parties are proportionally represented in the executive, which is a much fairer form of democracy than the winner takes all. In this case, you have the smaller parties. It's like the tail wagging the dog in this case. And so the smaller parties, they are synonymous with that. They operate from a position of wanting positions or wanting either in the administration or on the executive. And that is, in my view, a very wrong way of looking at it. And so I would think, and I would think that the more stable type of governance is when the two biggest losers get together and they put their ideological differences aside and says, let's govern in the best interest of the citizens, because that is the will of the people. They didn't give either of us a majority, so let's put our forces together. The problem is that we begin to enemify one another. The ANC sees the DA as the enemy, the DA sees the ANC as the enemy, and the EFF, etc., etc. And now we have this problem where this winner-take-all mentality of it's our way or the highway. And so this coalition governance, unstable coalition governance, does not work for the citizens of a particular area, because it brings also instability into the administration, which is in any case tasked to deliver services.
And all these politicians, as they fight, you find that crime also is, laying bare in these different communities. For instance, in Ekurhuleni, there's a video doing the rounds on social media where a group of people are stealing a cable next to a police station in Ekurhuleni the same day or the same week that politicians are fighting in council to remove the speaker, etc. So it just looks like everybody's just doing whatever they want, because this is the example that has been set for South Africans. But, isn't this also something that we should look at in terms of the legislature? around coalition governments. It looks like it's something that's going to be a reality, possibly even on a national level. And this might mean that every 3 months we have a new premier or a new president in South Africa, which would make things worse. So shouldn't we look at, legislature around coalition governments so that we as citizens make sure that the politicians are forced to make decisions that are good for us and not necessarily make decisions because it's good for their own numbers and their own positions?
Yeah, in a previous conference that I attended, and SALGA is busy with this, COCTA is also looking at legislation to stabilize or to form a form of governance to regulate how coalition governance should operate. Look, this is entirely new. It's fairly new. It's about 13 months young, if I say, this coalition governance. And so we are in our baby steps learning how this works. But I'm saying at the end of the day, the people that suffer are the citizens when it comes to matters of service delivery. Now, I believe that there are good politicians in various political parties. And if we can get the level of political maturity, and I emphasize political maturity, South Africans want proper leadership. They want to make sure that we fight unemployment, create jobs, and make sure that we get rid of inequality. And we need the collective wisdom of many people. I think the days are gone where one political party stands on the soapbox and says, I have all the answers. And so there's a collective of ideas that we need to move this country forward. The energy crisis that we face at the local level, the local economic development, all of these matters require the collective wisdom of many, and that is not in one race group, it's not in one political party, it's across the board. And South Africans will need to work towards this consensus model where we work together and stop enemifying one another. The DA is not the enemy, the ANC is not the enemy. They were voted into these offices to make sure that they govern in the best interest of the people. What we are seeing is not governance in the best interest of the people, but rather political parties negotiating or slandering one another to protect their own self-interest and their own egos.
Now, there's something that Action SA said, in terms of what they think happened. They're saying that the talks and negotiations didn't go well. And this is another thing that also, I think, irritates a lot of South Africans, including myself, because as Joburg residents, yes, we got stuck with the coalition because there were no agreements. It wasn't an outright win for any party, back during the local government elections in 2021. But now you find politicians speaking among themselves and doing all these negotiations to put each other at top positions and saying, we'll give you the mayorship if you give us the portfolio of finance, etc. We become very despondent when we see people doing that because it's not the mandate. They're not carrying the mandate of the voters, of the electorate. But then you look at something like that, and don't you think, with Action SA saying that the DA is the one that put Mpho Phalatse out there to fail because had they agreed to what the demands were from coalition partners, they wouldn't be here today, etc. Doesn't this clearly show South Africans that whoever takes the mayorship then will probably want to protect their position by giving the political parties that put them there whatever they want?
I think there's this perception as well that this all-powerful mayor can make things work immediately. Governance is not as easy as switching on a light. And political parties have offers in 5 years to be able to carry out the mandate that the electorate gave them. Now, again, I'm saying the form of coalition governance, imagine they spend all their time negotiating about positions, about talking about how to solve the energy crisis, how do we get the economy to work, local economic development and poverty. We do not find that. And so political parties, especially, and it's the smaller parties, the two bigger parties, the ANC and the DA, they just can't seem to get this right. If you put aside the differences, I'm not saying exclude the smaller parties, but that is the will of the people. The stable form of government would be for the ANC and the DA in Joburg, for example, to work together and to set aside the differences. That is what the voters want in any case, because the new mayor will come in. He will have to look over his shoulder all the time because he is not sure when or who will stab him in the back. And so the smaller parties have got a record of negotiating from a position of what can I get, not from what can I give. And politics is about the art of the impossible. How do we make sure that we govern and make sure that this dream that South Africans have of a better life, of prosperity, of jobs, that is realized? We do not see a seriousness amongst local politicians to realize the collective dream of 1994.
Yeah. All right. Well, Doc, thank you very much for your time. Maybe the legislation then should force political parties who come out number 1 and 2 to actually work together. Maybe legislation should actually force them. I wonder how possible that would be. That was local governance expert Dr.